So I want to blow a hole, dynamite the rocks out from somewhere over here to way over there, to cut this ridge out and dump all this dirt over there to fill in what is currently a kind of gully. Sounds extreme, doesn't it? It is. And I've never dynamited anything in my entire life. Although when my dad was a kid, he was a powder monkey. He did some dynamiting for the railroads. But that would allow me to potentially build a road from down there along here and then along that whole slope, which would be really cool. And I might put a building dug in right in here. It would be an interesting spot for a building. This gets into the bigger issue of like, how do you sculpt land? And it's a puzzle I've been working on for 20 years and would love to actually talk about it with somebody who's a professional in that. And I don't know what that is. Certainly a civil engineer would be useful to talk to, but I already know about the water flow that would occur as a result. You know, I know how to control that. I've looked at how erosion works here. I know a little bit about the geology of the place. And so these disciplines I'm mentioning aren't quite what I want to know about. I need to bring that bulldozer guy up here and talk to him about, can I put a road on that slope? I mean, it's a really slopey slope. It's steep. And so, I mean, it'd be a great spot to be able to go from one place here on the land way over there, all flat. That would be just really cool. It would open up amazing views and stuff, and it uses a slope which isn't useful for anything else. And I have some building ideas where I want to dig into the slope and actually have a building on slope. There's huge advantages to that for rain capture, for using the sun to heat the building. There's lots of benefits. So I know there's some to-do items. Well, first of all, is there like a profession for that? I mean, sculpting land. We end up sculpting land over time, but usually that's done in smaller plots as the land value goes up, and they're sometimes incoherent. I know back in Seattle they did a project where they used water to destroy an entire hill. It's a very hilly area up there, and I have a lot of slope. Slope is good, but I want to use it well. And certainly small lots don't do that. There has to be an overall big plan for how water flows, where the sun hits early in the morning and in the sunset. Thinking about the geology of the place so you don't cause a mudslide. And so you capture as much water into the landscape as possible instead of having it flow downhill. What microclimates do you have and which do you want to alter or create? Where can you put ponds in? I mean, I want water features here. There's no water here. It is dry as a bone right now. It's awful. It hasn't rained. This is the biggest heat wave in this area in recorded history. That's a severe problem, and it doesn't bode well for the future. So, luckily, I mean, I already know what bulldozer work I want to do. Although I've had some crazy ideas as I think about it that I didn't have before. They're more expensive because I'd be making changes and then immediately have to build on top of them. Otherwise, I'd mess up basic functionality. But I probably got 20 days of bulldozer work I'd love to do here, you know, to make building sites, primarily to make roads, because if you don't have access to a part of your property, if you can't get there with a vehicle or a trail even, which in some cases is true, then you can't really utilize it, maintain it, enhance it. You can't really be as involved with the land if you can't get to it. Certainly for harvesting, you need a road. And then I drew up a map of building sites, right? And fairly much larger buildings, and 3 to 4 stories dug into slope, because we want to minimize the human footprint on the land itself. Nobody else thinks like that, and I don't understand why. They talk about this in pattern language, where the ideal building height is 3 stories, and then I want people to actually be living on single floor sections of that. So they're essentially living on stacked ranch houses, all connected up with good public stairways, not private stairways. I don't think you should have a private stairway in your house. It's very inconvenient. It's a safety hazard probably as well. It just doesn't make sense. It's a waste of space. Yeah, it's dry. Down here I got bulldozer work to fill in this road here, because when it rains you can't even get through it well. You have to speed up and hope you make it and don't get stuck in there. And the rains are coming fast. So this is one of the many projects I need to figure out financing for. Unfortunately, this is not a sexy sounding project, right? Bulldoze stuff. It sounds mean and horrible, and like, why would you bulldoze the forest, you terrible destroyer of Earth? And it's like, well, I kind of have a different perspective on that. And anybody who listens to things I think better have a fucking open mind about bigger picture ways of thinking about things. The thing is, if you bulldoze it right once, and I'm not saying bulldoze the whole thing at all, I'm saying bulldoze, I think I bulldozed, I calculated it was a little over 1%. I think maybe it was under 1%, I forgot. It was around 1%. The point is, I bulldozed almost nothing at this point, and I've improved it radically. So I want to bulldoze another %. And if I bulldoze then 2% of the land, actually I might bulldoze more than that in preparation for building sites, but that's another issue. It doesn't have to happen right now. The point is that if you concentrate the human use in a way that actually is involved with rain capture, moving rain from one season into another, improving your wildlife, and if you're only cutting a small amount, all of those places like that I've done currently, like these dirt roads, the only reason this one is even clear is because I use it. The ones I haven't kept clear just grow over. And sometimes they grow over even more than everywhere else because I'm capturing the rain there in a certain way. So it's just not as simple as saying you should never use a bulldozer. And yes, I know they're noisy gasoline machines, but we have this opportunity while gasoline is still cheap to re-landscape the earth for greater productivity and biodiversity, to improve microclimates, to improve the human use of it. And if we improve the human use of it, that protects the land from just being destroyed, just being raped of its resources. So it makes sense, trust me. Don't trust me. Think. Learn how I'm thinking. Help me write it up better. Help me communicate it better. And I still haven't come up with all the rules of where and why I would bulldoze something. That's a very, very tricky thing to figure out. And because, it's a major change to the landscape. Now, in this case, this is a road that I put in before there was even a road to connect it over there. And this has become my main road I use. But when I first put it in, I didn't know, it wasn't usable for anything. It didn't go anywhere. But later, somebody else bulldozed a road over there, and suddenly it was useful. So, the other strange idea I've had, as I'm confused about, where would I put a road or not? I mean, in many cases, it's easy. I understand the rules of how we do things in certain types of spaces. I'm creating these rules, these design rules, and I understand them. In other cases, I don't know, and that's where I need help. I know that one of the next steps is to drone map the entire thing. And that's a little bit better for like if I was trying to raise funds for it, rather than say, yeah, I want to bulldoze everything, which is not the case. But to say I want to raise money so I get a really detailed map from this hydrologist friend of mine. He's really awesome. And I mean, hydrology is like the study of how water goes through a landscape, right? And so a lot of this will be about capturing rain and creating, therefore, lakes and things, in addition to roads. And those are two of the first things you want to put in then figuring out where do buildings go, which will, once I know where buildings are going to go, then I can focus on planting a greater diversity of plants and food forest in the other spots. Because I don't want to put trees and food forest in spots where later on we're just going to, change the use of it anyway. Like put a road right there and have to kill the tree. I don't want to do that. So, I've had dreams of, I don't know if this is possible with like ArcGIS or some kind of open GIS system, where you could just have the drone map of the topography and then apply rule sets to it so that it would suggest where to put things. And some of that's real obvious. Like if you have a fixed entry point road-wise, it would then suggest that you may wish to run the road on contour right through the landscape to the other part. And I'm talking about pretty big properties here, right? This is a lot of forest. I'm not talking about designing your backyard. That's a different task. Here, the decisions to be made are enormous, and they're far different. The methodology I want to advocate is far different than if everybody just has their little 2-hectare or 5-acre lots and stuff, because then they even those are too small to make a coherent plan for a larger landscape that makes sense, that actually reduces the amount of road use per person, that reduces our footprint upon the land. Anyway, this automated system overlaid onto GIS, and I'm making this up. I don't know if this exists or could exist, but it certainly should. I knew a guy in college who was using GIS to write a model for how forest fires are likely to travel across a landscape so you could predict forest fires and what they're going to do. So I think that's what he's doing. I don't know, he told me about it a long time ago. But so it seems like by automating a GIS system like this, it could say, look, here's your best views. Here's your weird microclimates that I know about, the program knows about. You want to protect those for plants and animals and stuff. Here's where I would recommend you put a park. Here's where I'd recommend you have a more business-oriented section of your land because of, for example, road access. Like the whole southern side of my land is all set aside for things that might want potentially to have more public accessibility. Places where ponds go. Well, that's a no-brainer where there's spots in the landscape where automatically the water wants to capture there anyway. And so why wouldn't we have the program advise us and say, put a pond there, and you could put a pond there if you were willing to bulldoze this, or here's places where you could put a pond right now, or here's places where you could put a pond if you were willing to bulldoze this, which might then give you a road that you didn't have that you want. I have spaces like these that I'm talking about. So I'm thinking of very specific spots. But me doing this as an individual, thinking about, how to sculpt land is very weak. It's not the right way of thinking because it's all in my head and it's based on hanging out on this piece of land for 20 years and looking at it and going, what should I do? Like I waited 9 years before I even put in any bulldozer work at all. And I'm really happy that I did. It hasn't changed most things because I haven't built a lot. Well, I haven't built anything since then. But it's opened up opportunities for building things. And I didn't make anywhere for ponds because I wasn't thinking at that level and that just wasn't a priority. But the point is, this GIS type software package could do this work on an unknown piece of land, because now I could go to a new piece of land and it wouldn't take me 9 years to think about, where should I put a road. I would be like, well, based on, if I started with a good map, based on these particular aspects of the land, here's what you would do. However, there's some really tricky issues, and one of those is a design rule I have, which I'm going to break, is don't consider the property line. Like even right in here, I'm now off my own property, right? The ideal road would actually go along this slope along 2 properties. Now, without some program or designer suggesting a better way for everybody to increase the value and use of a large piece of land, the 2 owners are unlikely to try and work together. And so they're going to build roads in less convenient places because they're following the property line. Like at the top of my land, I'm going to make a road that probably follows pretty much the entire upper side of the entire land. And I haven't totally figured out some of the details on that. Like, do I have it go up and down on the up and downs? Because now I'm not making contour roads anymore, and I really am dedicated to contour roads. But that's not a contour if I'm following the property line. Property line is not on contour. But most things that get built should be based on contour for water use and planning, and for ease of use. Like you should be able to walk around a far way and not go up or down. I mean, it's healthy to go up and down, and you should have other trails where you can go up and down when you want to. But let's say you have a cart of stuff, and we're trying to get away from car culture. And so even though we don't care as much about up and down with cars, because they're powered by gasoline, we do care about it for other things like carts, horses, burros, walking. So we want to open up the maximum amount of land and have it be flat, low energy to get to. And how does that affect the total amount of road? Well, I don't know that it would. It might. There's some math involved there and things, and that's a case where I should talk to somebody. But I'm trying to reduce the percentage of space that is road, but maximize its value. Anyway, I don't even know. I think I asked somebody online about this. I asked in a public forum, and nobody responded yet. If there was a way I could automate GIS to do this work for me, because even the skill set that I have now, I don't know how well I would be able to quickly implement that, or what good a job I could do at it on some unknown piece of property, right? And so a program could actually make suggestions and maybe not even say like this is the best thing, but say, well, you could do this, and then that would affect this other thing, like for example, views, right? I didn't used to care about views at all, but now I'm thinking, well, where I'm at with east-facing, southeast-facing slopes, which are just perfectly awesome, better than south-facing here. But getting that morning sun, I'm really interested in that morning sun and the morning view, which also happens to be a good sunset view as well, because the way it lights up the landscape. You don't see the sunset, that's on the other side. But anyway, I want those buildings to be placed so that the public, or the users of the building, can maximize public use of the view, so that it's not just all, the best views are all clogged up by the richest people with their low density housing, which is something you'll notice, for example, on Queen Anne Hill in Seattle, or a billion other examples around the world. Million, whatever. But that's the normal thing, right? Is the rich people own the best views. A little bit different in Rio, maybe, where you've got the favelas, and so that's the rule's not a solid one, but it often just turns out that way. Also, with very valued spaces, people build too close to them, and they put people close to it. Like, for example, down at the beach, I know one of my favorite beach towns, they built right up to the water. And I would have drawn all that back and had it be parks near the water. and then some businesses mixed in, right? Blobs of businesses, restaurants, spaces to go off and go swimming or boating, or have a dock or things like that, but have large sections up front on the waterfront be park. And the problem is that when you start out, when you move to an area, this is the problem with evolving a space, right? We evolve a space and we say, hey, I'm going to put this thing there because that's the most convenient for me, and I'm just thinking about myself. No, we have to think about the far, far, far future that may or may not ever even occur. And so this GIS program could potentially, redraw up designs and zoning for the entire planet. And some of that would match up with what exists now. Mostly it would not, because my thoughts about town sizes and nature of cities and all sorts of things are not in tune with how reality works. But who knows, maybe it would suggest, this is a good place to put a freeway. And there is already a freeway there, because it turned out that's what it is. It might identify places we haven't built yet, but that we could actually build ecologically sustainable towns, and base those new towns on full rain capture, full composting toilets, full energy sustainability, digging into slopes so you never have to use any energy for heating or cooling your building, like done the right way. And so there could be land that currently isn't being used that much and will be better than the legacy use, the old use that it had before. Rezoning the world. And I'd just be really curious to see if we were to compare the two of how have we done the world and how would we rezone it? What would be the difference? And of course now we have changes from how things were before, and there's always been changes, right? There's whole cities that are now underwater. Presumably because there was a bigger ice age than we're in now, big glaciers and stuff. And so people built close to the water level rose and covered their city. That's why they discovered sunken cities. It's probably where legends of Atlantis come from. Stuff like that. And we're currently undergoing climate change of sorts that, this GIS program could know things like, well, the coastline may not end up being where it is now. And it might suggest a very different use than we have had now. Anyway, I got to figure out my bulldozer stuff, and I got to do that fast too, because forest fire is another big risk. I'm almost to the range now this year, and so I didn't have a forest fire this year. I'm so happy about that. But I have to get my shit together and have funding to get a bulldozer up here and just do fire breaks, which are roads. I mean, there's not a lot of difference. And make it so that I can have building sites and camping sites and better use of the land. But I got to get that figured out. Anyway, goodbye. I'm getting into town now here.